Hey mamas, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chanel. I am a working mama, and this channel is always to empower you with the education that you need to have a fearless and empowered natural birth experience regardless of the birthing environment that you are in. Now, if you have not checked out part 1 of this series where I talk about dilation and station, what they are, do we even need them, what the difference is, make sure you check that out before you watch this video so this one actually makes sense. But in this video, we're going to be talking about if I'm getting vaginal exams or cervical exams, whatever you want to refer to them as, that's fine. But what am I doing with that information? If I understand that my baby's in negative station, what am I supposed to do to help my baby descend? If my baby's in a 0 station, how do I move to get my baby to move to a positive station, and so on and so forth? We want our baby to get to a positive 2 station, and that's where our body will start to naturally push our baby out. So in this video, I'm going to go through negative station movements, 0 station movements, and positive station movements so that you can labor effectively and make it as short and as efficient as possible. Now, let's review really quickly what it means to have a baby in a negative station, what that actually looks like in your pelvis. So if your baby's in a negative station, that just means that your baby's floating up here and has not actually engaged in your pelvis. So what that means is when it comes to our pelvis, if baby has not actually reached our pelvis yet, we need to open up the top of our pelvis. This is called the inlet of our pelvis. So we need to open up the top of our pelvis to actually make room for our baby's head to actually fit into the top or the inlet of the pelvis. Once our baby is at a 0 station, again, this is where baby begins to rotate. This means our baby's in the mid pelvis. And when our baby's in the mid pelvis, we want to do some movements to also help open up the pelvis in the middle so that we can help baby to rotate. And then of course, once baby is starting to descend a little bit into the positive station, we want baby to of course have more room down here, which is called the outlet of the pelvis. And we want to open up the bottom or the outlet of the pelvis, and there are specific movements that we need to do for each of these stations to actually be effective. Because of course, what does not make sense is if we are doing movements that are opening up the top of the pelvis, but your baby's trying to get out of the bottom of the pelvis. You see it's closed, right? Or it's not fully closed, right? But it is going to become more narrow and doesn't give your baby as much room. But of course, if you open up the bottom, look at how much more room that your baby has to actually descend out, and vice versa. So we want to make sure that we're opening up the right part of the pelvis at the right time based on the station of our baby, which is why I say dilation does not matter. It doesn't matter. Because you can say, oh, my baby is 7, or I'm at a 7, I'm 7 centimeters, but your baby is floating up here. So you think automatically, oh, I'm 7 centimeters, baby must be in my pelvis, right? Must be getting close. So you're doing all this stuff to open up your pelvis down here, but your baby's up here. If you're opening up your pelvis down here, that's making it harder and giving your baby less room up here. So if your baby is floating up here, that's not super effective for you. So let's go through what are some movements that we can do. This is not an entire exhaustive list, but I want to give you at least a few movements that you can do if you are going to get cervical exams and ask the station. You don't need to know how dilated you are. You can simply ask your nurse or your provider, can you just tell me what the station of my baby is instead of the dilation number? So let's first start with understanding how to, if our baby is in a negative station, that's a -2 or a -1, what do we do to open up the inlet of the pelvis? So that means that we are going to, this is my pelvis, I'm opening up this area. That is a knees wide, ankles narrow situation. So one of the main movements that you can do during early labor or even during late pregnancy or throughout the rest of your pregnancy, doesn't really matter, is a deep squat. So what's most beneficial about this is that when I'm in this deep squat position, this is allowing my knees to be wide, and it's also allowing the inlet of my pelvis to open. And that's what we want to do to create a lot of room if our baby's at a negative station, because if you give your baby a lot of room here, that gives your baby a lot of opportunity to go ahead and move into the pelvis and get to a -1 or a 0 station. So deep squats are a really helpful way to do that. The other thing you can do is you can sit on your birth ball. That's obviously helpful because your knees are a little bit wider when it comes to that. Your pelvis is relaxed, your pelvic floor is relaxed, so that's also a really helpful position to be in. You can also sit on the toilet because typically if you sit on the toilet and you have a squatty potty, your knees are going to be kind of up here and you're going to have your feet sitting on something, but they're going to be wide. So those are a few great positions to be in early labor or when your baby's at a negative station. Anything with your knees wide is going to be helpful. Of course, upright positions are always helpful. Walking, curve walking, doing some of those things are going to be helpful too. But ultimately, we want to do things that are going to open up the inlet of the pelvis. So deep squat, anything with your knees wide, but just try not to do what I'm going to tell you when we get down to this position. Try not to do that if your baby's at a negative station because it's not really beneficial for you or for them. Now, let's talk about what do we do when our baby is actually in the mid-pelvis. So that's when your baby is here. You might start feeling a little bit more pressure at this point. As your baby descends, you'll start to feel more pressure on your cervix, so you will probably have an idea that your baby is descending. You may not know exactly what the station is, but in part 3 of this video series, I'm going to actually talk to you about how you'll know what the station of your baby is without having to get vaginal exams. So I will talk about that in part 3. But what do we actually do when your baby is in the mid-pelvis? Well, if our baby's in the mid-pelvis, we want to, again, do some stuff like this, uneven hip movements, right? Because that's what gives the mid-pelvis the most room and helps our baby rotate. So what are some movements and positions that we can do when our baby's in the mid-pelvis and when we need to kind of make some more room in the middle of our pelvis? All right, so if our baby is in the mid-pelvis, we need to do uneven hip movements, like I said. So a few different things that you can do, which basically just means that we're doing something on the opposite leg, basically on its own. So curve walking or marching, if you have a step stool, you can obviously do this on a step stool, but curve walking is a really helpful movement to do while you are in the mid-pelvis or while baby's in the mid-pelvis. This may also be active labor, which is really helpful because, again, that's an uneven hip movement. Another position that you can get into is a lunge because, of course, if you're doing a lunge, which I typically have my clients do this on an elevated surface, so a couch or a chair or a stool, just because it allows the body to actually go deeper into the pelvis and deeper into the lunge. It's really helpful to be in a lunging situation in this moment because, as you can see, my hips are uneven and it obviously is going to help my hips and my pelvis have that uneven hip movement and bring a lot of opportunity and space for my baby. So I can just go ahead and lunge in and come out. Lunge in and come out. Lunge all the way in and come out. And you may need some support during labor. I would highly encourage you to have some support, either your doula or a partner, to make sure that you have some support and some balance because, as we all know, balance kind of goes away when we're pregnant, especially when we're in labor. And then the last position that you can try, of course, there's more things that you can do from this, but the last thing that you can do is you can go ahead and just sway left to right. And that's what we tend to see a lot of naturally without us even having to coach, is you'll probably be leaning over and doing something like this. Just naturally, because that's what your body is trying to do on its own, but this is an uneven hip movement and it's really simple. So those are some positions that you can try and that I would probably rotate through when your baby's at a 0 station, maybe even a -1, maybe even a +1, like we're still kind of around that 0 station, so those could still be pretty effective movements or positions while you are in that mid-pelvis area. Now, what do we do when our baby is at a positive station? That means, again, that our baby is starting to make their descent, right? You're feeling a lot of pressure at this point. You're probably like, okay, baby's gonna be here anytime right now. I feel like it's probably just about to drop out of my body at this point. So baby's at a +1 or a +2 station. And when your baby's at a +2 station, this means that they're basically crowning. So your body's starting to push your baby out. So If baby's not already doing that, but you feel like baby's about to, baby could be at a +1 station. And if you get checked, you may find that out. So of course, when baby is in a +2 station, +1 station, this also includes pushing. We want to create space down in the outlet of the pelvis. So we need to do something that's actually going to help our pelvis open. Now, if you sit on your hands, so you can understand what this actually means and how you open up the bottom of your pelvis, you can sit on these two little skinny bones underneath your butt called the sit bones, and you're going to keep your feet flat on the ground, and then you can actually just put your knees close together and then further apart. And what you should notice is that when your knees are closer together and your ankles are a little bit further apart, even though, when we're pregnant, our knees may not fully touch each other, that's okay. We just want our knees to be more narrow than our ankles. When our knees are together, the outlet or those sit bones, which are here, those sit bones expand and create more room. And then when our knees are apart, the sit bones come together. When our knees are together, the sit bones come apart. So we want movements and positions that are going to cause our knees to be more narrow than our ankles. So a lot of us refer to this as knees in, ankles out. So what sort of positions or movements can we do to help open up the outlet of our pelvis when baby's in a +1 or +2 station? For one, you can just simply get into a high squat. So what a high squat looks like is if you're leaning over a chair or a table or the bed, you can simply get into that position and just kind of, if you look here, just simply kind of put your knees together a little bit and push your butt back, okay? You don't have to go into a full squat, but if you're looking from the side, knees are a little bit more narrow together. My knees are not touching because that's really uncomfortable, but my ankles are a little bit further apart. And what I can do is I can kind of just push my butt back. And what that's doing when I'm doing that sort of combination of a movement is I'm opening up the outlet. So that's one super simple way to do this, opening up the outlet of the pelvis. Another really easy way is to get on hands and knees. Now, when I'm on hands and knees, this is probably the best pushing position that you could be in if you feel strong and comfortable in it, but also because it's really easy to get your knees and your ankles out. So if I'm in hands and knees, again, a really optimal pushing position. If you can see here, it's very easy for me to just go ahead and rotate my ankles outward and have my knees inward. And that is a simple way for me to just kind of rock back and forth while I am in the outlet or positive station with my baby. And that's making a lot of room in my pelvis, and it's obviously a much more comfortable position for us to labor in. So if you have the opportunity to do any of those positions, I would highly encourage you to take note of those, put it in your birth plan just to remind yourself, like, when my baby is at a 0 station, I could do this. And then when my baby is at a positive station, I could do this. So hopefully these will be helpful and useful for you. Of course, practice these positions while you're pregnant so that you're not trying them for the first time when you're in labor, because that's not actually effective. So just make sure that you guys keep these things in mind. But again, understanding the station of your baby is going to make labor a lot easier for you and a lot more effective than just simply focusing on dilation. And I hope that these positions are simple enough for you to just utilize and add to your daily workouts. Of course, you have to do what your body is telling you, listen to your body, and of course, modify as needed. So, hope this video was helpful. Make sure to check out part 3 of this video where I'm going to talk about how do I know the station of my baby without actually getting cervical exams if I don't desire those. So, stay tuned for that. Make sure to check out that. I have some other videos that will be really helpful for you to understand the stages of labor and other things that would be helpful for you as you prepare for your birth down in the description below. And of course, make sure to check out my full childbirth education class, which is self-paced. You can go through with your partner and offers virtual coaching if you want that one-on-one time with a doula. Check that out. It's all in the description. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and make sure to follow me on Instagram at awerkingmama for daily tips and tricks on positive and effective birth education to have a natural, fearless, and empowered birth experience. See y'all on the next video.